When the original Phantasy Star Online was released for the Dreamcast, it was a big deal because it was the first online RPG for the system, but it was also the first online RPG for consoles in general. When it first came out, people were going online with the Dreamcast, the servers were populated with lots of people, and it created a really fun experience. People would play Phantasy Star Online for hours on end, looking for new items, leveling up their characters, feeding their mags, trying to make them look different and unique. And the whole interaction with other players made it a really unique experience at the time. Its successor, Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2, has its own little niche simply because it's the first online game for the Gamecube, but it won't nearly have the impact that the original had. And in some ways this also translates to the type of people that will want to play this game. People that played the original game extensively on the Dreamcast probably won't find a whole lot or a really good reason to play this game. Episode 1 is the same exact Episode 1 in the original game. Episode 2, it features new levels, but really it's still basically the same gameplay over and over again. So really, if you played the old Phantasy Star Online, there just really isn't that much of a reason to play the new one, also because of the new subscription fee that's involved in the online game. And also because there actually is no keyboard available in the North American market. So communicating with other players is somewhat lost now that you have to rely on simple chat and preset macros to communicate with other players. Those new to the Phantasy Star Online experience will find an incredibly addicting game that's mainly driven by the competitive element while playing the game online. When you see other players online, you're going to be comparing your own character to them in terms of the weapons they have, the armor they have, or what kind of power they have, or even the mags that they have. So really, that competitive element online is what really drives the game. It's what drives you to keep playing it, even after you've beaten the game, 4 or 5 times. This competitive element is essentially lost in the Phantasy Star Online single-player campaign. You don't get to communicate with other players, you don't get to engage in trading items or weapons, and you also lose out on the whole team play aspect, where you get kind of a balanced team of the different classes in the game in order to get through the levels. There is a storyline in the game for the single-player mode, but it's really shallow. It's basically the same story as in the first game, and you'll basically pay no attention to it. It hardly ever actually comes up while you're fighting through the levels, so it's not that big of a deal. You won't pay attention to it at all. Sonic Team has also added a split-screen multiplayer mode for Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2, but there are a few problems involved, none the least of which is the camera. The camera presents quite a few problems when playing in split screen. It's really hard to maneuver it around, particularly when you're walking through narrow corridors. In some cases you really can't even manipulate the camera so that it's in a proper position. This is especially noticeable during one of the boss fights where the camera is continually panned upwards and you can't pan down to see if there are any hazards on the ground or any items that you may have missed, so it's really a big problem. Also in split screen, if one of your teammates dies and you don't have any moon atomizers or items that can bring them back to life, then if that player goes back to the Pioneer, basically the home base area, then all of you have to go back to Pioneer. You can't have players stay in the level and then have 2 of them back up on a ship, which is unfortunate because obviously that's a big element in the online game, to be able to have players continue on in the level, set up a telepipe so the players that died can come back in the later part of the level. The game looks on par with the Dreamcast version of the game. I mean, you won't see a huge drastic difference between the visuals in PSO for the Dreamcast and Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 for the Gamecube, especially in Episode 1. Sonic Team did go back, and it looks like they cleaned up some of the special effects a little bit to take advantage of the Gamecube hardware, but you won't really notice anything big. As far as Episode 2 is concerned, the early levels in that particular campaign don't look all that special either. In fact, they look like, Episode 1 levels. But once you get past those areas and you get to the later levels in Episode 2, it's just a huge difference. Instead of these narrow corridors or indoor areas, you have these vast outdoor areas with plenty of special effects, like amazing looking water, amazing lighting. It's just really a huge difference that you'll be able to see almost immediately. The frame rate usually remains solid throughout most just the regular rooms or those areas. But it tends to take a dive during the boss fights, particularly when you have 3 other players in the game with you. It's especially noticeable in the dragon fight in Episode 2, where the dragon actually splits. The frame rate slows down to a crawl almost, and it makes it really difficult to, kind of target any portion of the dragon's body. And A lot of the music in the game serves a supplemental role. In some cases, it actually just serves as ambient noise for the level. I mean, there are a few tracks here and there that are more distinct than the others, but none of them particularly stand out as being, you know, amazing. The game also supports Dolby Pro Logic 2, so those of you with, you know, nicer sound setups will be able to take advantage of sort of the, you know, richer sound effects in the game and all that. Basically, Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 comes down to this. If you played the original game on the Dreamcast, then you really don't have a major reason to buy the GameCube game. There's no keyboard, there's a subscription fee. Yes, the later levels in Episode 2 look great, but you know, it's the same style of game, so if you played the older game extensively, there isn't really a substantial reason for you to pick up this one. However, newcomers should, you know, really seriously consider forking over the $8.95 a month. The game is incredibly addicting. It's really fun to level up your character, find new items, you know, feed your mag so that it morphs differently. There's really just all sorts of little things that you can do. So newcomers to the Phantasy Star Online universe should definitely consider picking up Episode 1 and 2 for the GameCube.